It was a typical Friday night, and I was craving pizza. I decided to treat myself and ordered from the local spot that always delivered quickly. It had been a rough week, and I just wanted to relax with some greasy food and mindless TV. The weather outside was miserable, rain hammering against the windows, lightning flickering in the distance. I didn't mind. In fact, the storm added to the cozy atmosphere I was hoping for. After placing the order, I settled into the couch, the hum of the television in the background as I scrolled through my phone. 20 minutes later, I heard a soft knock at the door. Odd, usually the delivery driver rings the doorbell. I shrugged it off and grabbed my wallet. As I opened the door, the warm light from inside spilled out into the rain-soaked night, illuminating the figure standing on my porch. The delivery driver looked off. His face was pale, almost ghostly, and his eyes were wide and darting, as if he was nervous or scared. He held out the pizza box with trembling hands, barely meeting my gaze. I chuckled awkwardly and said, "Rough night?" He didn't respond, just stood there, staring past me into the house. It was as if he was looking at something or someone just behind me. I glanced over my shoulder, but of course no one was there. When I turned back, he was shoving a small slip of paper into my hand. "They're waiting for you," he whispered, almost too softly for me to hear. Before I could even ask what he meant, he turned and practically sprinted back to his car, tires screeching as he sped away into the darkness. I stood there bewildered, the note clutched in my hand. "They're waiting for you." What kind of weird joke was this? Shaking it off, I headed back inside, shutting the door behind me. The storm continued to rage outside, the wind howling as rain lashed against the windows. The house was eerily quiet. Too quiet. Usually there's at least some background noise, a creak of the floorboards, the hum of the refrigerator, but tonight, it was like the house itself was holding its breath. I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that had settled over me. I placed the pizza box on the kitchen counter and unfolded the note. The words were scrawled in messy, hurried handwriting. "They're waiting for you." A chill ran down my spine. Something wasn't right. My mind raced through all the possibilities. Was it a prank? A mistake? But the driver's expression had been so serious, so filled with dread, that it made me question everything. I decided to check the house. Maybe it was my nerves getting the best of me, but I needed to be sure I was alone. I moved from room to room, flipping on lights, peering into closets, under beds, anywhere someone could hide. The place was empty, just as it should be. But the further I went, the more that nagging sensation grew, the feeling of being watched. I finally ended up back in the living room. I tried to shake it off, telling myself it was just the storm and the creepy delivery driver messing with my head, but then I heard it, a soft creak, like a footstep, coming from upstairs. I froze, every hair on my body standing on end. I listened, straining to hear past the pounding rain, and there was again another creak, followed by the faintest sound of something dragging across the floor. Someone was in my house. My heart pounded in my chest as I crept toward the staircase. The logical part of me screamed to leave, to get out and call the police, but something drew me upward. I took each step slowly, the wooden stairs groaning under my weight. When I reached the top, the hallway was dark, the only light coming from the occasional flash of lightning. I stood there listening. Nothing, just silence, thick and suffocating. I took a few cautious steps forward. The sound came again, this time right behind me. I whipped around, but there was nothing, just the empty hallway stretching out behind me. But now I could feel it, the unmistakable sensation of eyes boring into my back. I wasn't alone up here. My breath hitched as I realized the source of the sound wasn't behind me, it was coming from the end of the hall, from the closed door to the guest room, a room I hadn't entered in months. The dragging noise grew louder, as if whatever was inside was scraping its nails across the wooden floor. My pulse raced as I approached the door, my hand trembling as I reached for the knob. I hesitated, every instinct telling me to turn back, but I had to know. I slowly pushed the door open. The room was dark, lit only by the occasional flicker of lightning. For a moment I thought it was empty, but then, in the far corner, I saw a shadowy figure crouched low to the ground, back turned toward me. Its limbs were twisted, unnaturally long, and it was facing the wall, its head twitching in short, jerky movements. I couldn't move. I couldn't scream. My mind was struggling to process what I was seeing. Then it stopped moving. Silence fell again, heavy and dreadful. Slowly the figure began to turn its head, inch by inch, until it was facing me. But it wasn't a face. It was a void, dark, empty, and endless, with two hollow eye sockets staring directly into mine. The thing let out a low, guttural moan that reverberated through the room. I stumbled backward, my heart hammering in my chest. I could feel the walls closing in, the shadows stretching toward me. Suddenly the lights flickered back on, and the figure vanished. The room was empty. But the silence persisted, as if the air itself was holding its breath. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. I spent the next few hours sitting on the couch, every light in the house blazing, the note crumpled in my hand. When morning finally came, I decided to leave. I packed a bag and drove away, not even bothering to lock the door behind me. I couldn't stay in that house another minute. As I drove away, I caught one last glimpse in the rearview mirror. Standing in the upstairs window was the shadowy figure, watching me leave. The next day, I tried to go about my life as normally as possible, but the terror from the night before lingered. I called in sick to work, telling them I wasn't feeling well. I needed to gather my thoughts and calm my nerves. The morning light, however, did little to ease my anxiety. I decided to return to the house. Something in me needed answers, or at least some closure. Armed with a flashlight, a camera, and a determined spirit, I drove back to the house, hoping it was just a figment of my imagination. The place looked even more foreboding in the daylight, but I steeled myself and approached the front door. To my surprise, the door was slightly ajar. I pushed it open cautiously and stepped inside, the air heavy with a musty smell. The house seemed normal, nothing out of place, but I knew better than to trust appearances. I moved through the rooms with a sense of dread, taking pictures and noting any abnormalities. Everything appeared undisturbed until I reached the guest room. The door was closed, but I could hear a faint scratching noise coming from within. My heart pounded as I slowly opened the door. The room was empty, but then I noticed something unusual on the floor, a collection of old, dusty photographs scattered around. I picked one up and froze. It was a picture of me from the night before, taken from inside the house. The photo showed me walking down the hallway, the shadowy figure just out of sight behind me. My blood ran cold. How had someone taken this picture? I quickly gathered the photographs and left the room, feeling the oppressive silence closing in on me. As I moved toward the stairs, the house seemed to grow colder, and a deep, low hum filled the air, almost like a distant chant. I dashed down the stairs, only to be stopped in my tracks by a loud bang coming from behind me. I spun around to see the front door slamming shut on its own. My breath quickened as I turned to face the hallway, which now seemed to be filled with shadows moving against the walls. Just then, my phone buzzed. I checked it, and there was a text from an unknown number with a single message, "You're not alone." I glanced around the room, panic rising. Then I saw a shadow creeping along the wall, moving toward the staircase. I bolted for the door, but as I reached for the handle, it was pulled away from me. The house seemed to be alive, resisting my escape. In a moment of sheer terror, I grabbed a chair and threw it at the door, smashing the glass and reaching through to unlock it. I fled out into the daylight, not stopping until I was safely in my car. I never went back to that house again. I moved to a new city, leaving behind the remnants of a nightmare. But even now, I can't shake the feeling that someone or something is still watching me. Every shadow, every flicker of darkness makes me wonder if I'm truly safe, or if I've only escaped the horror for now. And every time I hear a delivery driver knock on my door, I can't help but think of that chilling message, "They're waiting for you."